Today's show is brought to you by locally owned and operated Highland Rim Speedway. Highland Rim Speedway is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year with great short-track, door-to-door stock car racing in a safe, family-friendly atmosphere. Visit their website at highlandrim.com. From the family grocery hauler to fire-breathing racing engines, the one name you need to know is USA Motor and Machine, located at 51 Cleveland Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. Give them a call at 615-726-3725 or at usamotorandmachine.com.
Well, the start of the season is close and questions remain unanswered. Is it the end of Starting Park? What does Kurt Busch have in common with Lance Armstrong and Tiger Woods, among others? And will PETA appear on the side of Dale Jr.'s car? Larry Woody and I have the answers coming up next on Pit Pass.
All Cooper CPAs, located in the heart of East Nashville, offer a wide variety of tax services for individuals and businesses. Contact them at 615-257-0646 and visit their website, allcooper.com, for a full list of services.
Jeff Meeks and Chris Austin invite you to watch your favorite sports event at the Batter's Box at 43 Hermitage Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. The Batter's Box offers shuttle service to all Titans home games. It's a great place for friends to gather for the game and after the game. So check out the Batter's Box Bar and Grill, and thanks again for sponsoring the show.
Microcasting for your city. Talkopolis.
Well, welcome everybody to this edition of Pit Pass. I'm Joe Williams, along with my idol, the veteran, the expert, Larry Woody. Larry, it's almost time.
I'm ready. Fire 'em up.
We're getting close.
What, two weeks at Daytona and we get the shootout, or whatever it's called this year.
Well, and who's the sponsor?
Yeah, but a couple of weeks.
A couple of weeks
and we'll be on the track. But meanwhile, you've got a lot of
We've got a lot of stuff. We've got a lot of stuff to cover because there's a lot of preseason tidbits, I'll call it. Larry used to do little columns when he was with the Tennessean and just hit you with about 18 or 19 little notes that used to drive me crazy. You always had the insight.
Trivia. Fans love trivia. Tidbits, trivia.
Yeah.
Things you might be interested in, but
maybe not.
Maybe not.
One of the things that's happened, Larry, NASCAR has announced this week that they will redistribute the purse payout. They're taking money away from the last 5 spots, moving it up into the field in the payoff. Now, understand that the total purses will increase. However, Larry, those last 5 spots, the money's not going to be as good. It's going to get worse, if you will. The idea is to stop or discourage.
And we've seen a lot
of the start and park cars.
Joe, we've seen a lot of the redistribute the wealth philosophy here lately, haven't we?
It's not just in racing, is it?
No, I understand what NASCAR is trying to do. As you said, they're trying to discourage the start and park guys, the guys who enter a race, make the lineup, go out on the track, and once the race starts, they make a lap, come in, park, get a pretty sizable paycheck. In the case of the Cup Series, you can make about $3 million a year by simply making races through the season. NASCAR is trying to discourage that. I can see both sides, Joe. On one hand, I can understand why NASCAR is hesitant to pay out money to guys who don't race, who simply make the race. On the other hand, I can understand the guys who are driven to start in the park, as Gary Baker, our friend Gary, said he was driven to that in the Nationwide Series, and it's called survival. You know, during these economic times, there are a lot of teams out there who are struggling, hanging on by their fingernails to survive in this sport. Team owners have got a lot of capital invested, and they have bills to pay. You know, they have bills even if they're not racing.
Right.
So if they're not on the track and don't have some income coming in every week, they can't survive. So the way I look at it, Joe, these people don't start and park because they enjoy doing it. These people are competitive. They're racers. It's got to be excruciating for these guys to come out there and make kind of a farce of racing. They don't really race, as you say. They start the car and then they park the car. So they don't do it because they enjoy it. They do it for survival. And I can see both sides of the issue. I guess as long as the guys if NASCAR doesn't change the rules and the guys are starting and parking under the rules, I guess more power to them. Now, what NASCAR is doing is what you said. They're trying to discourage this by taking away some of that lucrative money you can get by going to a racetrack and not racing.
Well, the big risk to start and park is not the race itself. The big risk is getting through the practice, getting through the qualifying, making the race. Once you've made the race, you've made your money. Your risk, if you will, is over.
You're in.
kind of a disappointment, if you will. And I'll go back to times at the old fairgrounds when we would have literally 40, 43, 45 cars to start a local race. Larry, a lot of these guys who started 38th, 39th, 40th went in knowing that they weren't going to win this race, but they stayed out there because through attrition, etc. You know, there have been some guys who would start 43rd and come home with a top 10 finish.
Sure, let 10 cars drop out, and
Yeah.
you've instead of 43rd, you finish 33rd and make a pretty good paycheck. So again, Joe, as I say, I can see both sides of the situation, and I've talked to some of the start and park guys, including our friend Gary, and when you hear their side of it, you can see, you sort of sympathize for them. As I say, they're not doing it because to mooch off NASCAR or to collect a welfare check on race day. They're doing it to try to survive and hang on through these tough times, and hopefully at some point get good enough equipment to go out there and really race with the rest of the guys. But right now they're in it's a survival mode is what it is.
And I think one of the other things, Larry, is that some of these situations have started, and we've seen the last 4 or 5 years, where literally the guy who finishes, or gal, as the case may be, who finishes 43rd out of 43 on Sunday makes more money than the team that won the nationwide race, and by far made more money than the team that won the truck race on the same weekend, same place.
Oh, sure. A starting park person in the Cup Series who starts 43rd and has no intention of racing, just log a lap and go home, will probably make a whole lot more money than the person who won the nationwide race the day before, and as you say, certainly a lot more money than whoever won the truck race. As I say, somebody calculated it 2 or 3 years ago, and if you started each race and finished 43rd, you'd still make around $3 to $4 million, depending on some of the contingency money. So you can make a lot of money doing it. And again, I guess you got to give these guys, first of all, credit, Joe. In the Cup Series, you do have to haul your car to the race. You've got to get a car through inspection, which is not easy to do. You've got to know what you're doing, and you've got to have a driver that can get in the car and drive it fast enough to qualify. I mean, there are some minimum requirements. For example, you, me, and Terrell Davis couldn't go to Daytona in a couple of weeks and make the race, because even if you gave me a fast car, I'd be afraid to go over 40 miles an hour in it. So I couldn't be a starting park guy. So you've got to have minimal equipment and at least a modicum of talent to get out there and drive that car fast enough to make the race.
Well, you know, and there are expenses. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. The run through inspection, NASCAR's inspection, is $1,250, $1,500.
Just getting the car and the crew to the track.
No, just to get the car. That's the inspection cost. This is what we're going to charge you to look at it. And the regular teams are all upset. That's why they're trying to bring out that second car, because if the second car comes out, goes through inspection, guess what? They're out another $1,200, $1,500, whatever the number is. But let's say it's $15,000, couple of grand for tires for one set to practice on, another set to qualify on. So I mean, the expense is extreme.
And the big expense, Joe, is getting to the track to start with.
That's the other half.
To hauling the car and the equipment and the gear and everything from somewhere in North Carolina to Daytona, or imagine across the country to Vegas or California. You're talking about maybe $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 transportation cost. You've got to have a crew and a team and everybody. You've got to put those people up in motel rooms. You've got to pay some kind of salary. You've got all kinds of expenses. So you've got an investment just to get a car there, and as you say, through inspection on the track. So it's not a complete free ride. These guys have got an investment made, and you know, at some point, if NASCAR keeps cutting those last place purses down, prize money down, will that investment, you know, if you're a team owner and it costs you $50,000 to take your car to Daytona to start in park, and you can only make $55,000 by finishing last, will you keep doing it? That's what NASCAR, I think, is trying to discourage.
Question that comes up is, what about the old issue of unintended consequences? Is it possible we could start seeing fewer cars show up for Cup races? Another thing that NASCAR announced this week, you know, they're going, Larry, to the new Generation 6 car, going to have the driver's name across the top so that you can tell who's in the car. It's not like the old days when you had one sponsor and you knew when the Tide car came by, Darrell was in it or Ricky Rudd was in it or whoever. Now, with multiple sponsors over the years, they're going, but not only is the name going across the top of the windshield, but so is a logo designating the manufacturer. They're really trying to get back to that manufacturer identity.
And they're almost going overboard, Joe. I remember in the old days, you got a program, and if you saw number 43 out there, you knew who it was, and you could identify the sponsor on the side. You didn't need somebody to put a brand name and a driver's name on the car. Fans knew who they were. All this, Joe, I've done as much research on the Gen 6 car as I've been able to find. It seems to me like it's mostly cosmetic. It's mostly appearance sake.
Sure.
The NASCAR is trying to get back to make stock cars look more like stock cars. Now, you know, some of the ramifications, there will be some changes in aerodynamics, so it's easy for me to say, aerodynamics on the track, because they don't match up with other cars like they did in some of those drafts.
Good coffee this morning, huh?
Yeah, great coffee. But I think that's kind of an aside. I think the real motive for NASCAR behind the Gen 6 cars is to make stock cars look more like stock cars.
The most frustrating thing I faced years ago as an announcer, and the fairground's a great example, and the other tracks across the southeast that we went to, when we had the old Grand American cars, the all-pro cars, it got really frustrating at times to know, to identify the car, I needed to see the front end coming off of turn 4, because they all looked alike except for, was it a bow tie? Was it a bird, you know, the Trans Am bird on the front? Was it a Ford, you know, the blue oval? What was it? And that was the only way you could tell, literally. And that was frustrating as an announcer.
And also, Joe, a good example was the old IROC series, where
Sure.
they drove the identically prepared cars, and then the cars would be tested, set up, and everything, and then the drivers would simply draw for them, and you might get that car, that car, that car. And it's supposedly, it was supposed to make the racing about the driver instead of about the car. NASCAR, Joe, in the old days, you know, they used to say you win on Sunday, you sell on Monday. I'm just not sure that fan loyalty is there anymore to brand names. You know, NASCAR put out a press release the other day saying in the old days fans would sit up in the grandstands and cheer for Fords over Chevys, and if a driver changed models. That was true to an extent, but I think it was a little exaggerated. I still think fans tended to go with drivers. If Richard Petty left a Dodge and went somewhere else, I think most of those Richard Petty fans followed him. There was some brand loyalty, but I tend to think it was overstated by NASCAR.
Yeah, but boy, if you had the right one, you got that loyalty for as long as you had them. All right, real quick, we wrap up the first segment. Larry, is it possible that Danica Patrick has now appeared in absolutely the worst, most horrible, yeah, I'm going to use that term, horrible Super Bowl commercial in history? You know, GoDaddy has done a lot of stuff, and I guess it works because we're talking about them. They've done a lot of stuff in the past, a lot of teasing with Danica and some other very attractive young ladies. But the kiss, you know, what I was enjoying for my Super Bowl festivities, I was done after that. I actually lost some weight Sunday.
No, I guess I never thought I'd live to see the Super Bowl with a stripper pole. But I guess, you know, how low can you go, Danica? How bad do you need money? Somebody throw a bucket of cold water on that girl and get her to the racetrack. I mean, she's embarrassed. I don't know if she realizes how badly she's embarrassing herself. Danica's too bright a young lady to get involved in sleazy stuff like that. And again, I'm just not sure that she realizes how embarrassed we are for her. Those of us who like Danica, it's embarrassing to see her in that stuff.
It has made me change, or not change, but at least consider changing some folks I do business with. Not that I would mention her sponsor. Tell you what, we're going to get out of here, take our first break by saying hey to our friends at USA Motor and Machine. You see them here all the time. You know what kind of work they do. And if it's engine work you need, go see our friends at USA Motor and Machine over in Cleveland. When we come back, oh yes, what do Tiger Woods, Lance Armstrong, and Kurt Busch all have in common? You're not going to be that surprised. We'll tell you when we come back on Pit Pass.